Hey guys, today in this video we're going to be covering guitar effects. This is Mr. Juan, and today we are really excited because guitar effects and effects pedals are a really important part of becoming a good guitar player, having a really professional tone. So okay, Mr. Juan has a pretty intense pedal board, which we can try to put some pictures so you guys can see it. But one of the things that we want to talk about is sometimes our students, I think they don't know that electric guitar is supposed to be used with pedals. So would you say it's designed to not have any pedals?
I mean, the effect base is the pedal, so you would want the pedals to get certain sounds out of it. So
yes, so it's almost like a chain. One of the things that we like to mention is how much of a chain of different elements produces the tone. And one of the things that I like recently, I was doing some research, and for every guitar player that is like high-end guitar players, people that are famous, there's a guitar tech, right? So what does the guitar tech do?
he tunes the guitar, fixes the guitar, anything that a guitarist doesn't want to do, which is
one of the things that I think is interesting is sometimes the guitar tech knows more about the guitar sound than the actual guitarist.
Yes.
Because they're the ones like putting the amps, setting up everything. They know exactly what type of picks they use, what type of strings. They're really almost like the right hand of the guitar player. And one thing that is very interesting on YouTube, you can put the name of your favorite guitar player and put guitar tech, and there's a lot of like interviews, and in the interviews you sometimes can see exactly what your favorite guitar player is using. So by the way, this is a pretty high-end guitar. It's a PRS, and one of the things that we want to talk to you guys about is the process of getting started in this, because I think we all started. What was your first electric guitar?
First electric guitar was a Brownsville guitar.
Okay.
It was cheap. It came free with my drum set, I think.
It came free.
It came free, yeah. So.
That's pretty epic. Do you still have it?
No, I
No?
don't.
Okay. So I think my first electric guitar was about $175.
Mine was cheaper.
I got it because I was producing some albums and I needed some simple chords, and I felt like, you know what, I'm just gonna buy a guitar, I'll play the chords, put it on the software, and just kind of copy them around. But we don't encourage you guys to spend a lot of money on gear. One of the things at the beginning is more education, more lessons, more knowledge, more practice. So don't worry too much about if you don't have the equipment that your favorite guitar player has. It's not about that at the beginning. They didn't start it with what they have. One thing, and I like to also mention this, is famous guitar people or people that are in really big bands have, how much money would you say they have in their guitar tone? Let's say someone, I don't know, what would be a good example of a guitar player today?
I don't think of anybody.
Like, let's say Keith Urban, you know, and I actually saw an interview with his guitar tech. So around how much money do you think Keith Urban has?
I think
in his guitar
he
rig?
could have anywhere from 10 to 20,000, I think.
Yeah.
With everything combined.
Sometimes even more, $100,000, $200,000. So one thing that is truly important is that you just put that into consideration, because when you hear your tone and you compare it to these people, it's very like, okay, it's not apples, to apples.
Yeah.
There's a huge discrepancy into what you're using against what they're using. But at the same time, it all comes from your fingers, because you can give Keith Urban or Carlos Santana a $100 guitar, and they'll still get on stage and play really well with it.
They'll make it sound
really good. So at the end of the day, all fingers. But let's try to dive in a little bit. We have, I guess, 5 effects that we want to cover. So the first one, and this one we chose it as first because it's usually the first one in the chain, and we're talking about a chain of sound. So usually in a pedal board, you link them up, right? Yeah. Effects, I like to say this. It's almost like if you guys go to one of these places that sells yogurt, ice cream yogurt type of thing.
Menchie's,
Yogurtland. You see how you have all the flavors? Effect pedals are exactly that.
Yeah.
It's flavors.
Yeah.
Now you can, I rather like dulce de leche. You can combine dulce de leche with other things. I think in the guitar you can truly combine it. We can even show you guys a little bit of that done specifically with this guitar. So let's start with the first one, compression sustainer. Now, would you say the compression, what it does, it's an effect that it's designed to push the signal down and make it a little bit less spiky. When you're playing big venues and big shows, You don't want your signal to be super loud, super soft, super loud. So one of the first things that we want is we want the sound to be really polished. And it's funny because I remember the first time that I played with a compression pedal, I was like, oh, sounds so much better.
Yeah.
And they're not that expensive, and I do think it's one of those things that is almost every electric guitar player should have a compression pedal. Now let's show them what the guitar sounds without the compression pedal, and then let's talk about it with it.
So without, sounds like this. So if I were to play hard, you're gonna hear a little spike. Doesn't sound that pleasing. And if I play soft, it's almost not heard.
Yes.
So what the compression does, it actually brings the loudness down a bit and the low volumes up a bit. So it depends on how hard you have the compression on. I usually keep it about fairly low, but it will make a difference. Without it. So it is squashing the tone down. If I were to play soft without it, with it, brings it up a bit.
So I would like to almost say that it makes your sound more professional, because it polishes both ends. It polishes your loud note, it polishes your soft notes. Now, how much is a normal compression pedal?
A decent compression pedal could go about $100.
$100. And one of the things that we're gonna put some even links directly to the products that we recommend. I think it's almost every pedal that it's a good pedal. It's about 75 to about 150 for each one of the pedals. Now, one of the things, as we're talking about flavors, you want to have more than one. But at the same time, we know it can get expensive. So one cool thing as a guitar player, your first, goal can be having maybe a compression pedal. Once you get that, maybe you can have another one. Now, one thing, we're using a Vox AC10, by the way, so all the pedal board is actually being run into an amp, and that's an important part of your sound as well. So it's important to know that the amp is part of the equation. Now, would you say everyone needs a sustain pedal? Compression sustainer?
I mean, not everyone needs it, but it definitely does help the sound. Just, maybe you dig in too hard by accident, it's gonna make the compression will bring it down.
Yes, especially if you're doing gigs. If you're doing gigs, you're playing live, it will make you sound better. So without a doubt, I think it's something that you could do. Would you say is the first pedal that they should buy?
For me, I think I'll go with a distortion pedal first.
Okay, which we're gonna cover that.
That was my first pedal. So.
Okay, and actually, let's talk about distortion. So now distortion, I think there's even more terms, but to try to simplify things, we're gonna talk about two types. So we're gonna talk about distortion and overdrive. Now, what would you say the difference between them is?
Overdrive is a little more clearer tone, so you're going to hear more of the guitar signal coming through with a little bit of dirt. That's what we call guitar terms, dirt.
Yes, and it's almost like when you think of rock music, it's either overdrive or distortion, sometimes even both at the same time. Let's show them a little bit of what does overdrive sound like.
Cool. So here's the clean.
And maybe you can do like a riff that would be like a rock-based riff.
That's clean.
That's
so
clean.
If I put the overdrive, so you actually hear a little bit of the distortion coming through.
Yeah, it starts almost like sound a little bit like a fuzz type of like thing. The overdrive is not as aggressive, right?
Yeah.
So, and usually in pedals, it's almost like, depending on the style of music, you may want to go more for an overdrive than the distortion. I think more like harder rock, distortion, right?
Yeah, definitely.
A little bit less distorted sound, probably overdrive. So what would we say, the first one of those two, if you only have money for one of the two?
If you only had money for one, I would say I would go for an overdrive that could get heavy enough. Because there's different types of overdrives. Some that are very light. I have 3 in my board, and they're all different. One is pretty clean, and it could get enough dirt. Then I have a middle one that can actually get very clean and very dirty at the same time.
Cool. So that's definitely a good idea. Now, can we show them what the distortion is with that same riff?
Yeah. So here's the clean.
Awesome. So for us, it's truly important that you guys understand a little bit of the difference. Now, what would you say is a good first overdrive? Like, what is a good pedal, like a good brand to go after?
It all depends on the price. But there's some Boss pedals make some good ones that are fairly inexpensive. That was my first overdrive. It was an OD3, I think.
Okay.
I don't really know.
There are a lot of green pedals for overdrives,
The
right?
Tube Screamers.
So the Tube Screamers, there's the Tube Screamer by Ibanez. I think they have 3 different models for it, but about $80 to about $120 for the overdrive. Now, when we're talking about these pedals are analog, so that means that there's the majority of the changes you're gonna have to literally move a dial, right?
Yeah.
They have buttons and little knobs that you have to move. These pedals usually work in a way that the option is either to turn it on or off.
Yeah.
Like if you want a change of sound, you literally have to get close to your board and change it, and they'll be on the floor. So one of the things that you're not gonna have the ability to change it between songs that much, right? Do you change your pedals between songs?
Well,
you
change the settings? No, not that much.
So pretty much what we do with pedals when you perform is turn them on or off.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of people have overdrive and distortion as 2 different pedals, because depending on the song and even the part of the song, you may have overdrive for, let's say, the intro and the verse, and you may put distortion for the choruses.
Exactly.
So it's good to think of that way. And again, this is a lifelong journey. There's the guy of Red Hot Chili Peppers. Have you seen his pedal board?
Not recently, no, but
I don't remember, but I think he has something like 100 pedals on stage. He actually has like almost like 3 different ones, and they're like, it's like a U of pedals.
Oof.
And he loves it, it's part of his sounds, and apparently he does almost every show is different. Every show he kind of want to push this one, push this one, push this.
I've gone through that before.
Yeah. They get expensive, they get heavy too.
Yes.
So the more pedals, the more
heavier,
weight.
the more weight you have to lift.
So it's good to keep that in mind. Now let's go to 2 more effect pedals that we wanted to cover. Anything that you want to add about overdrive and distortion? For example, what styles of music would you say that an overdrive really works for?
Overdrive works for lighter rock. You could even use it for country.
Okay.
Country works very well. Even sometimes jazz, if you want a little more crunch to it, you could say. Distortion would be for more hard rock. There's different types. If you want metal, if you like metal, you're gonna hear very heavy distortion.
Yes. So if you want to play Metallica type of music, definitely distortion.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So let's cover the last 2, and it's interesting because I almost think of like the meat and potatoes of a board would be first the tuner. By the way, it's super important to have a good tuner. The tuner also works as a mute switch. You can have tuners, right? If you want to show them a little bit, like right now we have a clip-on tuner on this guitar. But do you have a tuner on your board?
What I usually do is I use the clip-on tuner. Then I could save some space. But what I use to actually cut my signal is a volume pedal. So
okay, well, and that's probably for another live that we'll do later on, maybe like advanced pedals. Now let's talk about the last 2. I think are almost like little embellishments to your sound. Let's talk about, I guess, first the delay. So what does the delay do?
Delay is pretty much an echo. So if you think about, if you clap, it's gonna repeat the note.
And one of the things that the delay does is it copies the signal. So whatever you play, it plays it again. But every time that it plays the same signal a little bit softer. And you have control about the. It's almost like a copy. So you press or you play, it carbon copies your signal and it keeps carbon copying, but as getting the sound softer. Yeah. So let's show them a little bit.
So this is without the delay. So really dry. If I turn it on. I can even slow it down here. So you play. What you do is it really fills up the gaps when you're playing.
And you can play the same thing without, so you can hear it.
With it.
Now, one of the things, the next effect that we want to talk about is reverb. Now, reverb comes from like the echo that you will get in a room. Sometimes, for example, like in a room that is small, you're gonna get a lot less echo. If you're in a cathedral, it's a lot more. The reverb is very similar than the delay, but they're used differently in guitar. So if we can show them a little bit about a specific reverb.
So if I were to make it extreme, I'm gonna put a very extreme reverb so you guys could hear. So this is without reverb, very dry. Think dry. Now if I put an extreme one, sounds like you're in a cave.
Right? Yeah, big cave.
Yeah, and it just makes it very. For me, when I use reverb, I think ambient.
Yes.
You know, obviously you could have some lighter. See, there's very light.
Yeah.
You know, I could put my medium. It's a little bit more than my extreme. You know, you want to be careful not to use your extreme all the time because it gets muddy.
Yes.
Don't use your effects so much. They're just supposed to be there to help, not to take over your signal. That's
absolutely. Sure. Now, when would you say we use a delay and when reverb?
Well, I would use it for, again, it just depends on how ambient. For me, delay reverb has a lot to do with ambient. If I was soloing, I wouldn't put heavy reverb. I'll put a pretty medium to low delay just to give a little bit more beef.
Okay. Would you ever use both of them at the same time?
Yes.
Okay.
Most of the time.
Really? And in what context?
If you want to do some swells, which is, you know, swells with the volume pedal.
Yeah.
If you want to make it ambient, or maybe you just want to play, for example, both of them together. So if I were to turn it off, right? That's the delay. This is the reverb. That's both of them together, and you could actually hear the trails of both of them.
And for example, someone like The Edge from YouTube uses a lot of delay and also is very good at using it very musically, because I don't know if you know any riffs that would be similar to that.
For sure.
But sometimes what happens is like you hear and you're hearing like 16 notes, but you look at the guitar player and he's actually only playing 4. And the machine is making the copy, so they're using the copy as part of the musical riffs, which is really cool. But you need a delay pedal to be able to do it.
Something that he does, if you think about it, he uses something called that was something different. He uses something called a dotted 8th delay, which would go something like, hold on, let me get to my setting. So it'll be something like this. So without it, nothing, right? Then with it, and check this out. I'm gonna turn it on in halfway through, and you're gonna see the difference. So check this out.
You have to have good tempo because all of those copies are also dependent on you playing accurately.
Exactly.
So one of the things that I would like to almost say and add to this is the guitar effects pedals is a little bit more of an advanced thing. If you just got your guitar Tuesday, you don't need a guitar pedal.
At all.
You need to start practicing, getting clear tone, being able to know how to hold it. Remember that we have a video called Your First Guitar Lesson, so it's good to start with the basics. But definitely, when you get to a certain point, you need that in order to sound the way that
definitely when you start performing, you would want to go for your first
and the people that we admired, you admired part of their sound, and their sound doesn't come from just the guitar, it comes from a lot of like technology. But I think we're doing this live because we want you guys to know that these things exist and maybe start choosing one pedal.
Exactly.
Research it, research, okay, I want to get a distortion. Check what will be the distortion that you want, and maybe when you guys have a birthday or whatever, save up enough money to be able to get that.
That's what I would do. I'll get one by one. I started with an overdrive, then my next one was probably like a few months later, compression. Then I went for the delay, little by little. And if you guys say, oh, this one's too cheap, it sounds weird, start with the lower cost ones, the cheap ones, and you start upgrading as you go.
I think it's important for you guys to know about effects. I think it's important for you guys, even if you are not a guitar player, to know about effects. Because when you are a songwriter, you're playing with the band, you can tell the guitar player, can you lower your reverb? You know, that's too much.
Yeah.
Or like, I think, the distortion, I think is too much, you know, it's too loud, or I want more distortion. But it's important for you guys, if you're a songwriter, if you're a drummer, to be able to understand a little bit like what's going on. So you can also make some decisions on that end as well, and be able to communicate. I think we're in a world in which we're trying to get you guys to interact with other musicians. So knowing how other instruments work can give you some knowledge. So I guess that is pretty much it. That concludes the live. We are excited to continue to do sessions like this one, get you guys your questions answered. Definitely check links in the description of this video. We're gonna be posting this on the replay on YouTube, and we're gonna try to, on that specific video, put products that we recommend so you guys know what we recommend. Yeah. As a school and as teachers, I don't believe in recommending things that are really, really cheap. Just because we don't want anything breaking on you guys within first 2 weeks. Exactly. So we try to recommend products that are gonna last. At the same time, it is an investment, so we want, and we say this in other videos, put your money first on a good guitar. Yeah. The effects are going to Menchie's. So we're working about topics, but the guitar is the actual ice cream. Mm-hmm. So work on that first, and get good at it, because everything else will come. So see you guys very, very soon. Take care, and Juan can take it away here by playing a couple things.
I'll put some heavy rock stuff. Let's do it.
Let's do some heavy rock.